All right, we're going to continue our conversation about emphasis and focal point with another really depressing image that's all about death. It's going to be great. So what we have here is the raft of the Medusa. There is a link to a video that thoroughly explains the history and circumstances under which this image was created. What we're going to do is look at it formally, especially in terms of how the focal point and accents work. Here we have another really strong focal point, but we also have more secondary areas of interest, our accents. So the focal point is going to be this guy up here. Why is he the focal point? Well, one, he's got a dark skin tone against the light background of the sky. Two, he's really the only thing to look at in the top third of the painting other than the sail over here, and I can't have conversations with sails, so I'm more interested in this guy. He's waving a red flag. He is also, most importantly, at the top, the apex of this giant pyramid of surging humanity. So we've got all of this effort, all of this motion of the lines, the gestural movement of all these figures that are leading up to the crescendo that is this guy. So he is our focal point, and we'll come back to him. But we do also have some accents. We've got a really bright, strong light on this body that is falling off the boat. We've got an interesting accent over here where, again, we have a light body, but we also have, again, that red, a small amount of it, but that red. One of the few faces that's looking more towards us, and a gesture, a posture that is moving against the grain of almost everything else. So we've got everybody else sweeping this way, except for this guy who's going the other way. And we can then see the sort of pathos of the sense of loss and hopelessness that is part of what Géricault is trying to communicate within this image. So we have things that we can linger upon to look at that make us aware of how terrible the circumstances are. We also want to come back to our focal point because, in a way, the focal point is actually a little bit unsatisfying. The gesture, the movement of all of the figures that are leading up to the sort of cheerleader pyramid apex of this guy who is frantically waving his cloth definitely gets us to look there, but then we have a sort of disappointing lack of engagement. We can't see his face. He's shrouded in shadows. We're not really sure exactly what he's doing. Yes, he's waving that cloth, but why? And so we get there and we kind of then aren't satisfied. And that's actually really useful for what's going on here, which is another function of how an artist might be able to use a focal point in a composition. Here, we are still doing the, made you look, aspect of having a really strong focal point. It's going to grab the viewer's attention. But in this particular case, we aren't going to have a one-to-one relationship between the focal point and the most important thing in the image. Whereas in Schindler and in Goya, we are seeing the way in which the artist is using the focal point to get your attention, and the thing that you're looking at is the point of the image. It is the thing that you are meant to engage with. Here, we're using a focal point to get your attention, but it's actually not the most important thing in the image. The most important thing in the image is the boat that's going to save them. And the boat that's going to save them is so small, it's this tiny little dot on the horizon right there, that you really can barely register it when you're first looking at the image. What we have is an image that is intended to get our attention, leave us a little bit unsatisfied, and then we start casting about looking for what it is that we might want to engage with. And that process is going to lead us to discovering the boat that we're going to have be actually the thing that saves them. Incidentally, it is a little bit easier to see if we were in front of the actual painting, because the actual painting is huge. huge. It's bigger than the screen that we should be looking at this on if we were all healthfully still in our classroom. I miss you too. But it's still going to be fairly dinky and precarious. And think about like how desperate your circumstances are if your hopes for survival depend on this smudge on the horizon. What we have then is an even greater contrast between how desperate their circumstances are and the one thing that might save them. Just to make things even worse, the boat initially doesn't come and rescue them. They spend all of their last remaining strength trying to signal the boat, and though the boat does see them, it doesn't come immediately and pick them up because it's a boat and you don't turn them really, really fast. It actually disappears over the horizon and then swings back around a couple of hours later and does pick them up. What we have then is a strategic use of an image that's going to get you to engage with the work, and then you have to think about it in a slightly different way. And this is part of why some people are going to talk about what we are calling emphasis and focal point in terms of visual hierarchy. And we'll pick that up in the next video.